and then we'll continue on from there.
Okay, just saying this is Stacey. That's it?
Yeah, if that's what you want to go by.
Yeah, well, that's what I did last time, so we'll just stick with that.
What, Nick? Stacy? He does not approve.
I don't know what else to say.
You are listening to Chicagoland's finest podcast. The all-new Culture Cast begins now.
I'm the Kiwi.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is the all-new Culture Cast, and you'll probably notice right away that the members of the all-new Culture Cast are not present tonight. We are doing I guess, it's been about a year to the date where we did our last book,
It has, I noticed that too.
because I remember we released it in October.
In time for Halloween.
In time for Halloween.
Hopefully it. Yeah.
So hopefully this podcast makes it up in time for Halloween. Our listeners know that we had a baby, so we're not as fast at editing podcast.
That sounds like an excuse.
Yeah, it's the truth, though. All right, so tonight we are reviewing a book again. We are reviewing A Monster of All Time. Did I say that?
Yep.
Yeah, A Monster of All
All
Time.
time.
By the same author as the two books that we read or reviewed last year, J.T. Hunter. He's got a few other books that I wouldn't mind checking out. I kind of like the style that he reads or he writes.
Yeah,
Easy to follow.
it is, and he gets right to it.
He does. And before we jump right into our book review, let's do What Have You Been Watching?
What have you been watching?
Okay.
You can go first.
I've been watching, actually, a lot of Rob Zombie movies lately, which I just paused and need to get back to after this to finish up the new Three from Hell movie that Rob Zombie put out, with the third in the series of House of a Thousand Corpses and then Devil's Rejects, and now he just released Three from Hell. So that's what I'm watching.
I don't think I've seen any Rob Zombie movies.
It's one of those that you either, I think, really like it or you just don't. It's one of those. So it's very gruesome and graphic. It's right up my alley. So.
Well, I decided to watch, or at least the last season of Shameless. I don't know if you watched Shameless at all.
I watched the first season and then I kind of dropped off from it. It is a really great show.
It is a great show, and
for whatever reason.
I also like that it's filmed in Chicago, or it takes place in Chicago. Apparently they only film everything that you see outside is filmed in Chicago, but I guess all indoor scenes are actually filmed in I think LA or something like that. But like when they say Chicago references, I'm like, I know that. So it makes me laugh. So I started watching that because I'm like, I don't want to start reading another book before we did our podcast because I wanted this one to stay fresher on my mind.
Right, right.
And I'll let you do the honor of usually we do Man Crush of the Week, but we're going to do Woman Crush of the Week.
Woman crush.
Okay. Well, I guess in honor of me watching a lot of Rob Zombie stuff lately, I'll say Sherry Moon Zombie would be my crush of this week, just because.
Is that his wife?
It's his wife, yeah. She plays Baby Firefly in this particular movie trilogy, and I like her, so I'll pick her.
What's her name again?
Well, her real name is Sherry Moon Zombie, and then she plays Baby. Her name's Baby. Firefly is her last name. Baby Firefly.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen her before.
Yeah.
All right. Good choice. Good choice. All right. We'll jump into the book. So, I know that we've read, and you've read more than I have, serial killer books. Usually I am okay describing the stuff that happened in the book. I cannot say some of the stuff he did out loud.
No. This one is exceptionally graphic, and I mean, this guy is particularly depraved in the things that he did to several young girls, especially. I mean, he killed a couple men and a child, but
Yeah, I mean, we'll just reference like Ted Bundy was a very, notorious serial killer. Even he didn't do as bad as this guy did and his killings.
No,
Ted Bundy was
right.
bad, but this guy took it to another level where he mutilated bodies, and
Yep, he mutilated them and posed them, and
it's
yeah, he was
sick,
pretty sadistic.
very sadistic. It's Yeah. I mean, and I think, well, I guess we can say the total amount of people that he killed was 8. And those 8 killings were all brutally, murdered.
Yeah, yep. The knife was his favorite weapon, we'll say, I guess.
I did not
Um,
know. I've seen that knife before. They show a picture of it in the book. I did not realize that was the name of the knife. But then, like, at the end of the book, when they show the picture, I was like, oh, yeah, I could see that definitely killing people.
oh yeah, yeah. It's created for what they say. It was created for a weapon for the Marines, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's, if you think it got its name from somebody that had to kill a bear after it was injured and his gun jammed or something, and they could only catch part of what he said, so what they call, I've got to look it up. Sorry, they
Kabar.
called it a car bar. Yeah,
Yeah, something
bar knife.
kabar.
Yeah, something like that. Very sharp, strong blade that can pretty much cut through flesh and bone with ease.
Yeah, and he did. I don't know about you, but I did not know of this serial killer before reading this book.
No, I didn't. I didn't know about him either. I think he might have gotten overshadowed by other things. Maybe I don't know. They had mentioned it wasn't long after, or Ted Bundy was not in the too far distant past when this happened, and then Elaine Warnos was mentioned in this book too,
Yes, uh-huh.
where people had dealt with her. I believe it was the lawyer had dealt with Elaine. Was it the lawyer or the detective?
I
I
think
can't remember now.
I think it
Sorry.
was the lawyer.
Yeah, the lawyer. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
Had dealt with Elaine.
they shared the same lawyer. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna run with that. There was some connection between him and Eileen Warnos, but I'm pretty sure it was a lawyer.
Yeah.
So this killer, uh, he was the one who killed 5 Gainesville students, and then 3 people in completely different states. Was a grandfather, daughter, and like son,
Yeah, it was a grand. It was the man, and then it's his daughter,
and then
and then
her
the nephew
nephew.
slash grandson of yeah. So, yeah, the little boy and his aunt and his grandfather. The boy was 6, I believe.
I was thinking he was 11.
No, I think he was. No,
He was between 6 and 11. He was still a child. He was like playing video games, I think, when the serial killer walked in.
right.
Don't they say most people who murdered know their victims?
Yeah, they most of them, yeah, and that's how they, eventually end up getting caught. I believe stranger murders are a lot less common than uh, being murdered by somebody that you know.
I mean, this guy is the epitome of, like serial killer nightmares. I mean, walking into literally strangers' apartments. I think he did stalk his victims for a couple days,
Oh yeah, he's a keeper. Yeah,
but he, didn't know them and he randomly chose them, and it's like, oh, oh, man.
yeah, he chose them. I think a lot with if they resembled his ex-wife. It seemed like as he liked the petite brunette college students is what he seemed to prefer, I guess. But he started looking in windows as a young teen, I guess, when his one friend had introduced him to looking into his neighbor's windows. And then he, became a voyeur after that, just peeping into windows and watching that. And eventually, that wasn't enough for him. But it's not like he just started killing right away. He was pretty sophisticated in his kills, and the fact that he didn't really leave too much evidence for them to go on for quite some time. That's why it took him so long to catch him.
This crime took place, I think they said in 1990, just for reference for our
Right.
listeners.
Yep.
And we'll touch on this probably again later, but uh, you know what? I'm not going to mention now because I do want to talk about it later. I want to read an excerpt from the book, just to show you the thoughts of this man. The book opens and it says the prisoner had suffered daily torments during his confinement, each day falling deeper and deeper into despair. Raw sewage regularly seeped into his cell through the floor and flowed from a broken drain down the hall, flooding the cramped 8 by 10 concrete space with a revolting gray-brown liquid and an unrelenting stench. Kept in this notorious isolation, his besieged brain had betrayed him, replaying the grievous moments of his life, all the humiliations and feelings of helplessness, and every piercing word and every raw, painful memory. It was a constant reminder the world has always been a hurtful place of violence, animosity, aversion, and none of empathy or understanding. I mean, this was what was going through his mind, you know,
Hmm.
before he even started.
Yeah, before he even made his first kill. Yeah, and he referenced that jail cell quite a bit in his explanation of why he did what he did, saying that he made a deal with demons and the devil and
Yeah,
uh,
Gemini.
Gemini. He said they made a deal with a demon named Gemini, and so he had to kill for Gemini, or he became Gemini, and that's who actually did the murders and that kind of thing. So he tried to do a good job of you know making having a different ideal about himself than what he actually was,
I
or
think
portraying himself.
they did diagnose him as schizophrenic, right?
Well, they tried to. Some doctors said that he had multiple personality disorder, and I think they put him on the that spectrum of schizophrenia, like the schizophrenic spectrum. But I don't think he was ever diagnosed like full blown schizophrenic. I know he had a antisocial disorder and multiple personality disorder, according to some psychiatrists. Other ones didn't think that he actually had multiple personality, because they said when he was doing his crimes, he was very methodical and calm, and had the wherewithal to clean up after himself pretty much, and which wasn't characteristic of somebody that was, frantic and having different personalities, and that he was aware of what he was doing and very methodical in what he was doing.
This whole investigation from start to finish said it cost $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of money. And I mean, and what would be like with inflation, because this was, almost 20 years ago, believe it or not.
Yeah, actually pushing 30 years
Oh,
ago,
that's
because
right.
adding 1990, yeah, it's hard to believe. But
Sorry, it's late at night. I don't do math anymore.
oh,
Yeah,
shoot.
almost 30 years ago. Now, the interesting also part of the story is that there were two other suspects, and they kind of let one go early on, but there was another suspect that they were convinced that he was uh, either assisted or was the sole murderer, serial killer. And this poor kid had his life ruined, because of how they treated him.
Oh, yeah, Ed Humphrey.
Yeah.
He's a manic depressive, and hadn't been taking his medicine, unfortunately for him, around the same time that, this killer was out and about. And so he was acting erratically in the area of the murders, and got picked up after he had an argument with his grandmother. And they really drug him through the coals. They
It,
vilified him from the time they picked him up.
they did. And with the grandmother, now I don't know who's right, or wrong, but they said that he pushed his grandmother down and, she hit her head, it caused her to bleed. She said she fell on her own and that he had nothing to do with it. So
Right.
they thought, he was, he fit the profile. And, come on, you're a student. 5 people had been killed. Everyone suspected one another. And, this guy's roommates were, worried he was a serial killer, kicked him out. I get why they picked him up. I get why they were scared. But when evidence started to show he had nothing to do with it, they still held on to him. And he was convicted for, throwing his grandmother down, and hitting her head. He was sentenced to 22 months in jail, and they said, it was his first offense, and for a crime like that, it should have been only like a few months, or I think maybe
Or
even
probation.
a probation. But because they thought he was a serial killer, they decided, they couldn't say this, but they gave him a longer sentence to keep him in jail so the murders wouldn't happen anymore.
Yep. Yeah, 22 months was the max they could give him with, I think it was 14 years of probation after that, or 14 months. Maybe it was 14 months. 14 years seems excessive. 14 months of probation afterwards. But yeah, when evidence started pointing in an opposite direction, they did not clear him with the public or otherwise as a suspect, and they definitely made him guilty in the eye of the public, and just railroaded him, and his whole family suffered
And yeah,
greatly for years.
and what I don't understand is why was his name released to the public? Because, that would interfere with the investigation.
Yeah, you would think, and it's like they mentioned that there was leaks on all sorts of different information from the police department. So I'm sure somebody was getting a kickback of some kind, in order to state things publicly, or other, to release things to the press, to keep I don't know, if they were just trying to keep people calm, like thinking that they had the guy or what. But I mean, giving them a false sense of security like that, I don't think was an overly good idea either, being as they knew they didn't have him. So
The other suspect was Stephen Bates, who he described when they had interviewed him. He had described a fantasy that he had, which was pretty much one of the victims, the one that was, I guess I'll say, decapitated.
right.
So I get why. I mean, he was picked up, but he seemed like he was released pretty early on. Like, oh, he's not the suspect. Like, they kept focusing on this Edward Humphrey. And didn't his grandmother die while he was in jail too?
His grandmother died. I think he was out on probation at that time, following, because they were waiting to see if the grand jury was going to send down an indictment for him too.
Oh, right,
Um,
yeah.
right, and she didn't last long enough to hear that they didn't send down an indictment, because they just didn't have enough to indict him. But she died of a heart attack while having an argument with one of the family members.
Now, the whole reason I our serial killer's name is Danny Rawlings. He was a drifter that they had picked up, and I'm not sure what exactly tipped them off. And this is the part that I wanted to talk about. Was, this is 1990. DNA is not as well known as it was back then, and he had to have a tooth pulled, and so they went and took the bloody gauze, and the tooth after it had been extracted, to run DNA evidence, and it matched some of the DNA that they had found at the crime scene.
Yeah, that matched his blood type.
And O.J. Simpson committed the murders in 95, right? Give or take?
Yeah, give or take. Yep.
I remember my biology teacher in college said that if that jury actually understood DNA, that OJ would have been convicted. And, now this is even earlier than the OJ Simpson murders, and, now they're presenting DNA evidence.
Right. What year did well, it happened in 1990, but I mean it was several years later, but it would have been in the same time frame, I suppose, as OJ um
I don't,
Simpson's murders, but it took them, I mean, it was a few years after the actual murders before they linked him with that pulled tooth. And then they were trying to figure out if they were still trying to link Ed Humphrey to Danny Rawlings in some way, because they just didn't want to let him go.
right. It was probably like around within 2 years, though, because of the way Ed Humphrey was sentenced to 22 months.
That's true. You're right. Yeah, it looks 93. I believe it was when he got picked up. Yeah, it was within the next 2-3 years anyway. So yeah, you're right. It was still before um, OJ. So it is actually pretty amazing that they did have the wherewithal too when they were pulling the tooth to keep that tooth and the bloody gauze and everything and run it against them. I don't remember what tipped them off to um, necessarily to Danny Rawlings either. If
It
it was, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, he was a that says he was a drifter already in custody with another jurisdiction for armed robbery. Doesn't really say that what tipped him off.
No, and I know he was going by another name as he was drifting too, and I don't know if it was where they just simply linked, his robberies and things like that to the different, the different places and things to place him in the area of where the murders happened, and maybe that put him on the radar or whatever. But in any case, that's what they did, and yeah, they were able to match. He had blood type B, and that matched that up. And so I think that's when they sought a warrant to get hair, saliva, and blood to put it up against the other evidence that they had found at the different crime scenes.
This took over 200 investigators, and they had to go through more than 6,500 leads. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, the amount of manpower and time, and you'd imagine they'd have to investigate every lead they got.
Right, and how many students were calling in leads, suspecting
Yep.
people. Oh, man.
If they saw something weird or whatever. Yeah.
And I want to say, didn't this all happen like within maybe like a 1 or 2 week span?
Yes. He killed those 5 college students, just one right after the other. It was very close together, and and when he started, when he did it, it was so close together, and that's what also I think made it terrifying, was it was so effective and so quickly. But he did get interrupted on that last one. He wasn't caught, but the landlord or something had opened the door to the apartment and saw a utility bag or something like that on the floor, and so he shut the door back and waited for the police to come. And little did he know that Danny Rolling was inside that apartment and had to quickly finish up and get out of there. But it is eerie to think that he almost got caught right there, but who knows what he would have done if that person walked in there.
And he snuck in at night, and the landlord was there, or the maintenance person came in the morning, because one of their earlier victims, they thought they heard like the shower running and like music on the morning after like they were killed, which they didn't realize they were dead. But you wouldn't suspect people being dead if you heard the shower and music on.
Right. Yeah, he spent some time in there, and yeah, he snuck in at night and he stood over them while they were sleeping, and it's just super creepy guy.
The stuff of nightmares, for sure.
Oh yeah, and in fact, later in the book when it talks about one of the people that he, told the details to, and he had made, that guy had Bobby Lewis had made the reference. He said it makes Stephen King book look like a comic book that like is gruesome and horrible as Danny Rowling's crimes were. Yeah, it's the thing of nightmares and beyond. It's beyond anything you could ever imagine or think up. But he definitely struck fear into the hearts of Gainesville. He was very successful doing that.
And the last victims was a male and female, and the female asked her male friend to stay with her for protection.
Mm-hmm.
And he put up quite a fight, but he was still overpowered by this guy. Didn't he say like maybe he was stabbed like 30 times?
Yeah, I was thinking it was like 33 times or something like that, that he was stabbed, and he fought back, and he actually was cussing him out and everything, while he was being murdered. And I think it said that his last word was Tracy, which was his roommate. He said her name as he died, and she was actually standing in the doorway of her bedroom when Danny Rowlands walked out from her roommate's room after killing him, and she tried, to shut the door to get away from him. She knew exactly who he was, because she even said to him, she's like, "You're him, aren't you?" She knew she was going to die, which just adds a whole another element of just sickness to this guy's whole game, I guess.
I mean, like you can, the way the author talks about, you can just visualize what's going on, and it's pretty graphic, and that's why neither one of us are too keen on giving a lot of details.
Yeah, I mean, the females, he raped them and then murdered them, but in a very horrific, terrible way. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was, because I think he killed the two girls in the apartment first, and then he killed a girl that was on her own. He actually decapitated that one and put her head on a bookshelf. I mean, so that would be the first thing the cops saw when they walked into the residence. I mean, this guy was extremely twisted in his fantasies that he acted out. He was one of the most horrific people I think I've read about. And, we did the other books last year, and I thought the vampire guy
was bad, right? No, he's...
Yeah.
I would definitely say this guy's worse than the vampire.
Yeah, yeah.
It creeped me out a little bit that the victim that was decapitated has the same first name as me, spelled different.
Yeah, that creeped me out too, to be honest. But yeah, I was glad that it was spelled different, though.
Yeah.
That was its only saving grace. But yeah, it was a little eerie reading your name over and over in this book. But
yeah, it was sick. And that same person, I think she had worked for the police department.
Yeah, I want to say she was like a secretary or something in there while she was going to school. She, I mean, all of the people that he murdered seemed like they were like actually really good people, like on a really good path.
I know.
Just like civil servant kind of people, helping kids or elderly or helping in the police department or, things like that. Like, he really snuffed out people that could have really made a difference.
Stacey, you and I are both parents, and we're also both parents to two girls.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I would have done when the detectives described how, their kids were murdered,
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough that they were murdered, but, like, once you hear all the details, it's like, how do you not just, like, shut down and, like, never come out of it?
I don't know. And, all the parents of these victims sat through every court date and all that through the entire trial, and they mentioned how they showed pictures of their bodies, how they were found, and they actually had to black out some parts of the pictures that they thought were just too graphic to show. And I don't know as a parent how you would handle that and continue with your day-to-day life. I mean, when it references their quotes and what they said at different moments, I mean, obviously a part of them died, and they were just kind of going through the motions of life. But yeah, I don't know. It's unimaginable.
Oh, and we learn at the end of the book that once the trial was done, spoiler alert, Danny Rawlings, was convicted. The parents asked for the photos to not be shown in public anymore, but the public was so intrigued or scared or excited.
Morbidity, I think, is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah. They decided to not show the pictures in public anymore, but you could come down to the police department and check out the photos for 15 minutes, and you were in the room like with a police officer. And I think they said... What?
To make sure they didn't take pictures of the pictures. Yeah, they had to go by appointment.
And there was a line going out the door down the block. So
it's just unbelievable to me too, because I mean, I and we, I guess, read a lot of books about murderers and serial killers and watch a lot of true crime TV and things like that. But I don't after reading this book and finding out how he did. I think the way it was described gives me enough of a visual where I don't actually need to see a picture. I don't want to see it. Don't need to see it. I don't understand, the people that pretty much, gawk at like a car accident. Like you got to have some kind of level of respect for the dead, and their surviving family. Because I know one of the mothers of one of the victims stood outside of the police department, and was like, "How are the pictures? Did you enjoy them? How do you? I
Oh,
don't know how you wait
right.
in line, set up appointments to look at such a devastating event that have destroyed so many people."
I mean, I guess it would be one thing if it was released like on the internet and like parts of it were like blacked out, but to actually go out of your way
Yeah.
to go see these photos.
Oh yeah. Well, and just in the manner of which these young girls, I mean, they're like 17 to 19 years old. These young girls were brutally raped and murdered and positioned in such a way. It's like they were humiliated enough while they were being murdered, in my view. Like that should have never been an option for them to be shown like that. And I understand the judge said that he believes in the public's right to know. Well, they can read the transcripts from trial and find out exactly what happened to these girls. They don't need to see the pictures. The public does not have the right to see, the naked murdered bodies of these poor girls splayed out for display. I just don't understand the logic behind that one.
I wouldn't be surprised if even the book didn't give all the details.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
what he describes is, very graphic scene, and it just makes your stomach just turn.
Hmm. It's scary to know, too, what a person is actually capable of, because other people that described him, like past teachers and things, said he was a very pleasant person. He was helpful and polite and things like that. It always seems like any serial killer, or most of them, people are like, oh, the nicest guy in the world. I would never think that of them. And it just gives you an eerie feeling, too, that you just don't know what anybody's capable of at any given point in time.
What really bothers me is the guy who killed his wife and two daughters last year. I think he went out in California. His name was Chris. Looking
Mm.
at his photo, he looked like he was the guy next door.
Oh, yeah.
You would
It's like a
never look at
perfect.
him and be like, he's capable of killing his family.
Oh, yeah, in such a awful way, too. Yeah, that Chris Watts.
Yeah.
Yeah, just insane. And there was another one just like that. I believe it was in Canada, where a guy killed his wife with a sledgehammer and then killed his two daughters. It mirrored that Chris Watts, and it showed family pictures of them too. And it's like they just looked like the perfect family. But it just goes to prove you don't ever know what goes on behind closed doors or what goes on through somebody's head or anything like that. I know that they mentioned in this book that when Danny was growing up, his father was abusive and things like that. But at what point do you feel like, somebody has to rise above their upbringing? Every person that is abused emotionally and physically doesn't go out and rape and murder people. And I feel like sometimes they use that as an excuse. Oh, this poor person was victimized their whole life. And it's like, okay, well, I feel bad, but so,
I
you
mean,
know,
you
it
have to be
doesn't
held
excuse it.
accountable for your actions.
Yeah, I mean, he knew right from wrong. He knew right from wrong when he pried those patio doors open and stood over those people while they were sleeping and he was watching them sleep with a knife in his hand. I mean, he could have turned around and walked out right there, but he didn't, you know. And he made a lot of choices and did a lot of things, but, prior to his murders, he did break into people's houses just to break into their houses and spy on them and things. And, he did a lot of weird things, but he did do a few different rapes without killing his victims before he graduated, I'll say, to, the Gainesville massacre that he did. Um,
Speaking of the raping, there was one victim that he raped and didn't kill because she was nice to the guy.
Yep. Told her, I'm going to rape you all night and then, I'm going to kill you in the morning kind of thing. And after he raped her the first time, it had mentioned that she watched, what show did she, I can't remember what crime show she watched now. It just left my brain. But
Oh, she watched the
anyway,
show?
yeah, she watched true crime shows because she knew that sometimes, if you
Oh,
stand up to
struggle
the
or
rapist, yeah, it kind of made you more humanized, and it was a turn off to them if you showed that you weren't weak. And then it said other ones, if you were more submissive and friendly to them, that would kind of throw some off subject. So she took the risk and said, hey, while you're here, I have some cold beer in my fridge. Do you want one? And they drank a beer together at her table and talked all night. And then, at around 1 a.m. or something, she's like, oh, it's getting late. Maybe it's time you should go. And he did. He left,
yeah.
which is just crazy. But she wouldn't let him take off his mask when he asked if she could, remember? Because
Right,
she didn't want to see in his face and him killing her for it.
yes, and it wasn't until after the murders happened and everything, and then the trial, she heard his voice, and she goes, that's the guy who raped me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what she describes does fit his personality.
Oh, yeah, to a T.
Because he broke into the other person's house that he helped install the security alarm.
Yeah, yep.
And they were nice to him, and they said it was, I don't know if they used the words, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but that's who it was, like 1 minute he'd be really nice, and the next minute he'd be screaming, and, that family lived, surprisingly. But yeah, this guy definitely had personality disorders. Disorders.
I think he had several things wrong with him. But yeah, he did some crazy stuff. And what he had originally been in prison for is he liked to hold up grocery stores. I think it was a Winn-Dixie or something like that he held up and stole a car and fled from police. And then he got away from them then, but then he tried to rob somewhere else and they caught him there. He was ballsy, really. He did a lot of things, and he got away with a lot of things before they finally nailed him, too. And in fact, going back to that girl that he raped and he left the apartment, he actually got stopped by police walking through the parking lot of that apartment. And they said, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just walking over here to get a bite to eat and whatever. And they checked his ID. They gave him a fake ID, like it was Michael something
Michael
that
Kennedy.
He said his name was. Yep, Michael Kennedy. And they ran that ID. It showed up clear, and they sent him on his way. And he was right outside his rape victim's house when he got stopped. And he had made mention that, he'd been stopped by police throughout, his whole drifting days several times. And, they just never had any reason to suspect him. But he was living in the woods in a little, campsite kind of deal at the time of the murders of those kids at the college. He was in the woods not too far from there in a tent. But
it makes you shiver. With Edward Humphrey, at one point, some girl called in and said she found a suitcase at his campsite that had Edward Humphrey's name on it. So I don't know about you, but at that point in the story, I was like, seriously? Is this really happening? Or, did she make it up? And, turns out she made it up, but, this woman was sick because she wanted, for Danny to get her attention.
Yeah,
she wanted Danny's attention.
She had a crush on him, so she said that it was, she was his girlfriend, and he left that duffel bag at her house, which in reality, she was, I'll say stalking, for a lack of a better word, outside of Ed Humphrey's place when his dad was throwing a bunch of stuff away, and took this bag out of a dumpster and then tried to, make the connection between the two that way, just to get Danny's attention because she liked him. But there's a lot a lot of sick people in the world, because then
She
on
tried to
that
talk
same,
to Ted Bundy too.
yeah, she was trying to get with him too. But it's actually amazing how many women are attracted to, you know, serial killers in a way where they want to pen pal them and be, marry them
Yes.
and things
Yes.
like that.
That was
Um,
actually one of my topics to talk about was the serial killers and the women who love them.
yeah,
I mean, like it's a thing, sadly.
it, it is a thing, and I don't know what goes through the minds of those women when they decide to write letters to them and become pen pals and go to visit them and say they fall in love with them. But I don't know how you could be in love with somebody that you've never like physically been able to touch or be with by yourself or actually have a real conversation with. And it's just extremely odd, but it is a thing. I mean, there's tons of them that just pretty much line up to have a chance to be with these men.
Uh, I'm pretty sure like Charles Manson had a lot of people, women, men and women writing him for, his
Oh yeah.
many reasons. I think people were still writing him up until the day he died, which was just like a year or two ago.
Oh yeah, I think like he had married some woman not too many years ago, some young girl. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but it seems like I remember reading something about that. But you know, people, yeah, we're all over Ted Bundy, and I mean,
I will say, at least Ted Bundy was attractive, or at least for that time period, they found him attractive. I would not say this guy is attractive.
Danny Rollins,
Yeah.
Rollins. Oh no, no. Well, that was another thing about Ed Humphrey. Talking about him, I think like visually he looked like he could be a killer too because he had been in a car accident when he was
Hmm.
younger, and he had scarring all over his face. So he kind of fit that image that people have in their head of somebody that would be skulking around at night and like a monster. But yeah, this Danny Rollins was not a good-looking individual either. Uh, no, not like Ted Bundy. That's I think why Ted Bundy was able to, get women to go with him and help him out with different things before he killed them because of the way he looked.
He was
Whereas,
definitely a charmer.
oh yeah, smooth talker. But yeah, this guy, you know,
It was also interesting too that in Tennessee, I think, was that family of three that was murdered?
I think it was Louisiana, maybe.
Louisiana. Okay. Far away from Florida, but the murders were still close. I mean, they had a similar pattern to the murders in Gainesville. And, when they tried to bring it up, like, oh, it could be the same killer, it was dismissed pretty quickly that it wasn't related.
Right. Yeah, they didn't want to connect him for whatever reason. But he did end up, admitting to it later on that, yeah, he did kill them too. I mean, he was in the same area. He jogged at the same gym as the girl in that situation. Um, and the little boy, he was 8. Just found it. He was 8, and then his grandfather and his aunt that was killed in that situation. But he liked to um, handcuff behind the back and put tape over mouths. But the interesting thing too is he always took everything that he used back with him to not leave it behind.
Stacey, hang on.
Okay.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
We have a guest joining us. It's okay,
Hi,
Molly.
baby.
It's okay. Yeah, shh. Shh. I'm sorry, I don't remember the last thing you said was.
Oh, no, I don't remember. I don't know what it was either. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We can keep moving. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, we were talking about the last 3 murders and how he confessed when he was going into the gas chamber. Or I guess it wasn't the gas chamber, the lethal injection that he wrote
Right,
down
yeah.
on a piece of paper that he killed those people. And was it the boyfriend of the
Yeah, it was the fiance of the murder victim that they had originally, penned for it, and he told them that, he was 100% innocent, and it was himself, Danny, that actually committed the murders, that the fiance of the girl had nothing to do with it. I think it was her brother, that the girl that was murdered, I think it was her brother that he had sent that letter to, because they wanted closure too, because he was never actually brought to trial and convicted on those murders,
And
because they didn't want to extradite him from Florida.
and right, and he told a priest that he had killed those people too, and the priest he could not tell anyone.
Right. Which was an internal struggle for him, because he felt like he should tell somebody, but he couldn't. So,
One of my talking points was, should priests be allowed to keep a secret if someone confesses murder?
was it a priest or a psychiatrist? Because it almost seems like it was doctor-patient confidentiality type thing.
Okay, maybe it was a psychiatrist. I thought he confessed to a priest
but in any
too.
case,
Well,
he might have to. But in any case, I think they hold themselves to that same rule of thumb, I guess. I think if even like, especially if it's a unsolved murder, or there's a risk that they may, hurt somebody else in the process, I do think that they should tell somebody. It's kind of like if somebody goes into a psychiatrist and claims they're going to go kill themselves. Don't they have to report that or something like that? You think that would fall under the same thing.
I guess the difference would be he's already harmed someone versus threatening to harm people. He was locked up at that point, so maybe
Right.
they felt he was behind bars, he couldn't kill anyone.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a gray area. I think that's a moral gray area. I don't know that if there was an unsolved murder and somebody told me that they murdered them and I had reason to believe they were telling the truth, that I don't know that I'd be able to keep that secret. I guess it's a good thing I'm not in that line of work then. But
I think you were right that it was a psychiatrist, because he wanted to tell his daughter that she didn't have to worry about, being killed anymore because the killer was behind bars, but he couldn't say anything to her.
Right.
Was there anything else you want to talk about with Danny Rolling?
I don't know. I guess since he was sentenced to death and he did get lethal injection. I guess he's lucky in that sense, because they started giving the option. I think it said in the year 2000, if the inmate wanted to be electrocuted by electric chair or get lethal injection. I think it said that pretty much everybody chose lethal injection. But I guess the subject of capital punishment, do you think death penalty should be on the table, or do you think that is inhumane, and what are your feelings about that?
I was going to ask you the same question. Oops. scaring my daughter.
I'll go first, I guess.
Okay.
My standpoint on it, I guess when I was younger, I was all for death penalty all the way, fry them up, get them out kind of thing. But, as you get older and you think more rationally, and how many people that have been convicted of crimes that they didn't commit.
I know.
It would be horrible for even one person to be put to death that's actually innocent. However, this guy flat out, he pled guilty. They had his DNA all over they were able to match his DNA. It was proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that he did do it. So, I don't feel bad that he was put to death. I don't feel sorry for him. I think he did deserve it. But I think across the board, I would say no. It would be a case by case for me.
You and I both watched Orange is the New Black.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about being in solitary confinement, and how, that's probably actually worse than, probably being killed, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
The way it just screws with your mind. I guess, it's pretty inhumane, what they do.
Right. Well, and you can always say the argument of what this guy did to his victims was far from humane. It was pretty gruesome. But, does a murder for a murder, does that make it right? I mean, it's not going to bring anybody back. I guess it might bring some kind of comfort to the parents knowing that, the guy that brutally murdered their child isn't breathing anymore. It's hard to say because I don't know if somebody hurt my kids if I'd want them breathing anymore.
I know.
So I think the death penalty, I mean, it would have to be a situation like this Danny Rawlings where he actually committed the crimes, he admitted to it, he pled guilty, he was able to recount in overly graphic detail exactly what went down. They had DNA evidence to back it up. They had his whereabouts, placing him in the areas at the times of the murders and all that. I mean, you'd have to have,
Okay,
crazy amount of evidence, but
then
I
let
don't
me
know.
ask you this. I mean, if he said he was innocent, would you still have wanted
No,
the death penalty?
no, probably not. Because what if there was that chance that he was innocent?
Right. I mean,
Would you rather just have a guy locked up for the rest of his life? Versus, it's such a touchy thing because there's been, I mean, people exonerated after years and years for horrific crimes that they never committed.
I want to say
So,
like a few weeks ago, there was a woman that was released. I don't know if it was in Chicago or um, it was on the news anyway. I think she was in prison for like 30 years or something.
oh
And they,
yeah,
and they finally said, like, with DNA evidence and everything, that, she was innocent.
right. And it's like in Illinois, the death penalty was a thing until several years ago when it wasn't anymore. What if they would have put her to death and then, years down the line and they test her DNA and go, oh, well, she was innocent. Oh, well, she's dead now. So what do you do about that? You can't do anything about it. I mean, I know that 30 years of her life, she can't get that back. And, but I would assume that she's glad she's not dead, you know. Yeah, the death penalty is I can go back and forth on it. And I guess it would depend on, I guess the crime too, the capacity of it. I don't know. I guess I don't know where I stand on it.
With Charles Manson, he got the death penalty, and I'm sure he killed someone at some point, but for those, was it 9 victims, he didn't kill any of the people that he was going on trial against.
Right. Yeah, and he may or may not have actually physically killed anybody, you know, but he sure knew how
Orchestrated
to
it.
manipulate. Yeah, he knew how to brainwash and manipulate people, which, I mean, makes him equally as dangerous, really. I mean, turn people into robots and do your bidding for you, pretty much. It's a dangerous individual to have out roaming around. There's been some sick people throughout the history of time.
His death row stay was longer than the average person on death row. The average death row stay was 14 years, and he was on death row for 16 years. Can you imagine
Yeah,
those parents wanting
no.
justice? Year
Yeah, it's
by
like, and
year goes by.
all the different kinds of appeals and things like that take place and the length of time it takes in order for them to make judgment on the appeals. And then the governor has to sign, the death warrant or whatever they call it, the death sentence paperwork and all that to actually make it a thing. And I mean, it's quite the process that they go through to execute somebody. I mean, I guess, if the person was actually innocent, that's a good thing that they have those steps in place. But again, I mean, I don't know what they were trying to appeal. I mean, he said he did it. They were going on the grounds of, it's inhumane to kill somebody. But, it did seem to, I guess, not completely give closure to the families from their quotes at the end, but it did give them some kind of closure from the death sentence. It gave them some kind of relief knowing that he wasn't living anymore, you know, seemed to.
You know, in a weird twist, also, one of the victim's sisters was kidnapped at the grocery store and then strangled to death in a field.
Yeah, it was the brother's wife. The brother of one of the victims, his wife was in a parking lot, got punched in the stomach, hauled into a vehicle, yeah, and then strangled in a field. And yeah, it was insane that this poor guy, his wife and his sister were both brutally murdered by two different guys. And I think it had made reference briefly in there that that person got sentenced to death penalty too, because it had said that he was, had
Yes.
two death sentences that he was eager to watch be carried out. But it just seems like, some people are just go through just so much, so many tragic events, like too many for a single person to have to endure.
Do you think Rowling wanted to get caught?
Um, I think in some way that he did, because I think like somewhere inside of him he did have some kind of remorse. I think, he saw himself as a good person that did bad things on occasion. But, after he killed the last two victims, he got rid of the knife and everything, and he had said that that was it, and he was done. I don't know if he wasn't caught, if he would have decided to go somewhere else and kill more, but I do think in some way he did want to be stopped. I don't know that he ever really said that per se, but I do think that part of him did, and that's why he just ended up confessing to everything and pleading guilty.
He has a daughter, and the thing is, he would never hurt his daughter. That's what he said, and, I kind of want to believe him. But, someone who has love for their family, I mean, his wife did leave him. But I guess he was a victim of child abuse. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people victims of child abuse. So, what makes some victims of child abuse commit crimes while others don't?
Yeah, I think he also had a long line of mental illness that ran through his family, also, which don't, believe helps not to create an excuse for him, because really, I mean, it was determined that he knew right from wrong. I don't know, because it comes to a point where, you grow up and you either let that child abuse that you endured and all the bad treatment and rejection that you had become who you are, or you rise above it and do something, productive with yourself. Unfortunately, he didn't. But, while I feel sorry for him in that sense, I find it hard to feel sorry for him for the acts that he committed. I mean, I don't think there's any excuse for the things that he did. I don't care what kind of abuse he endured. I mean, that doesn't make it okay for him to act out in the way that he did.
Ugh.
Yeah, and I don't know, if he actually truly loved his daughter, at least, that he could commit these crimes to other young girls, knowing that eventually, she'd have to live with the fact that her dad did that.
You know,
Um,
it reminds me of Israel Keys, the one of the serial killers we did the podcast on before, because he had a young daughter and he was trying to get executed as fast as he could because he didn't want stuff getting released and his daughter, finding out.
right.
And he
No, and
he killed a lot of people, a lot of women.
yeah, and brutally too. Yeah, and it makes you wonder if these people that have they're psychotic, obviously, if they actually truly understand what the meaning of love is, whether it be a spouse or a child or whatever, they might think that they love their daughters, but are they even capable of feeling that? You know, to the capacity of somebody that has a rational thinking brain that doesn't go around, raping and murdering people, you know, in the way that we perceive and feel love, are they even capable of that? Or
Or
is it just
maybe it's what they perceive.
right?
Perception, their perception is their reality.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, it's hard to wrap your brain around what goes through somebody's mind that makes them capable of, doing just horrendous things to other living things. They do, people hurt animals and just any living thing, really. I mean, you have to, it's a hard thing to comprehend when it's not in you to do something like that.
I do have trivia.
Okay.
It's trivia time.
I mean, this was in the book, so it's more for our listeners, but this serial killer, the killing spree in Gainesville, inspired a very popular movie.
Yes, which I didn't know until I read this book either.
And after hearing what movie was based on it, I'm like, oh, I get that.
Yep, makes sense.
What movie did this inspire, Stacey?
Scream. Yeah, I actually had to reread that paragraph. I was like, wait, what? How? What? Scream. And then I'm like, oh, crap. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, as horrific as the murders in Scream were, I think that the actual ones were worse. But
right.
It does make sense.
A college
Definitely.
town, murderers, and yeah. Yeah, they said the screenwriter was horrified and intrigued, by the killing spree and wrote the screenplay, Scream, and sold it to the Weinstein brothers.
Yep.
All right, any more final thoughts?
Nope, I got nothing.
Yeah, hold your babies a little bit closer tonight. And don't listen to this podcast before you go to bed. Although this is at the end. Nick,
Right.
put this at the front.
or or just make sure if you're not on a second story, just look outside your windows and make sure there's nobody peeping in, watching you do whatever it is you're doing.
Double check your front door. Is your front door locked?
And deadbolted. Maybe get some motion sensing lights outside.
Do you have that Ring camera on your door? All right, well, that has been another episode of a book review from the all-new Culture Cast. I'm the Kiwi.
And I'm Stacey.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
You've been listening to the all-new CultureCast, where every episode is all new. Check out new episodes and our back catalog at allnewculturecast.libsyn.com. We could also be found on iTunes. The all-new CultureCast, a saltwater production, copyright 2019. Thanks for listening.
I'm Krista. Oops, no, I am not. Nick, cut that.